refuses Ravana's advances, and Ravana returns to his palace. The Rakshasas all go about their duty, and they leave Sita there sitting alone, at least for the time being. Well, Hanuman, he wants to go to her, but he worries. He thinks, since demons can take on any form, how is Sita going to know that he's genuine, that he really is sent from Ram? And at that point, he remembered the ring that Ram had given to him. And that was the very purpose of giving the ring, right? And so he pulls out that ring, and from above, he drops it down into her lap. Well, as soon as Sita sees this ring, she immediately recognizes it. And she looks up and sees this monkey looking down at her. And Sita says, "Where did this ring come from? Where did you get this thing?" Now, Hanuman is still kind of cautious. He knows that she's going to be looking for any type of tricks, so he's concerned about how to answer her. He wants her to believe him and to not think that he's a demon in disguise. So Hanuman, being the son of the wind, is going to take in a huge breath, and he recites the entire story of everything that has happened up until this point to her within a single breath. She doesn't have time to be afraid. So what Sita is getting is a revealed truth. She's not hearing the story over a period of a few hours like you are. She's getting it delivered to her direct. It's a revealed truth that's coming to her all within a single moment, within one breath. He gives her the whole story, and so she understands the truth at that point. Hanuman becomes happier and happier at the success of his mission, and as he does, he gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and finally he jumps down from the branch and he bows at Sita's feet. At this point, Hanuman is going to take on a new role. He's going to take on the role of the comforter. He's going to tell Sita that Ram has not forgotten you, that you have been praying to God and he is answering. He is coming for you. The events that have taken place, Hanuman says, are more painful to Ram than they are to Sita. He is so distraught by what has happened, but he's making every effort to find you. He wants to bridge the gap of this huge, mighty ocean. But whereas Hanuman, with his divine abilities, can jump across the ocean, the normal bears and monkeys' army is not going to be able to do that. How are they going to get across? So he has to find a way to bridge this mighty ocean. Well, Hanuman explains that he's a simple monkey, but by taking God's holy name, he was able to leap that ocean, and by that same power of name, Sita can be saved. Now, Hanuman offers at this point to take Sita back across the ocean, take her back to Ram, but Sita refuses. They both agree that Ram has to save Sita, because that's the mission, that's the dharma that was set for him at birth. He was brought into this world for the specific reason of defeating Ravana. Keep in mind that when you do read through the various Vedic scriptures, that every one of the avatars of the divine are mentioned by name. And along with that, you hear what their purpose is, what their function or mission is. And Ravana very specifically came into this world with the purpose of defeating the evil of Ravana. That's why he's here. And so Sita, knowing this, says, yeah, I want to go back with you now. I want to be rescued from this place. But if I do, Ram might simply go back to Ayodhya and sit on a throne, and that would be the end of things. Ravana's evil would linger here in Lanka. Ravana has to be defeated. He has to be destroyed. So Hanuman is going to move again, this time from the role of comforter back to the role of messenger. he is going to be the messenger to Ravana, the lower self, the lower being, a being that is referred to here as the king of ego himself. And so, since Sita refuses, she wants Ram to come rescue her so he can fulfill his message. They decide the best thing to do is for Hanuman to go to Ravana and to act as an emissary on Ram's behalf. Now, Hanuman takes on his big, large, massive form, and he begins to wreak havoc on Lanka. He destroys the fruit grove that's there behind Sita, and the warriors, they come out to attack him, but he pulls up the columns of the buildings, and he makes these huge, massive, sweeping motions with his arms, waving those columns around, and knocks them all over, crushing all of these demons. But eventually, he realizes that he must allow himself to be captured if he's going to get to see Ravana. Now, Ravana's son, Indrajit, is going to come out with a special weapon, and Hanuman is going to allow himself to be taken, to be bound by it. Hanuman is bound in chains, and he's taken before Ravana. And Hanuman looks up at Ravana. He's very calm. He's in a state of peace. And Ravana looks down at Hanuman with anger and with fury. And of course, you can see the dichotomy there between those two individuals, right? When Hanuman looks up, he's looking skyward, he's looking towards the heavens. What does he have? He's got a state of peacefulness. He's a being that is content. He is a being that has inner peace and calm because he understands that higher truth, because he understands that the divine is everything. Ravana is looking down towards the earthly realm, down towards the pits of hell. And what does Ravana have? How does he act? He has anger, he has fury within himself, because he doesn't have that peace. He doesn't have that contentment. He is the demonic figure of the story, and he's bringing that ego into the world, and because he's driven by that desire and that power and that ego, he's not able to find the peace that Hanuman has, even though Ravana is the one who has total power now, and Hanuman is the one that's in ropes and chains. At this point, Vibhishan, the good demon, is going to come into the court, and he says, Hanuman, tell us who you really are. And he replies that, I'm just a monkey. But as a monkey, I come with a message from Sri Ram. I've come to deliver this message from God. And so Ravana demands to know what the message is, and Hanuman gives his reply. He says, You've kidnapped Sita. You've harmed Sita. Give her back now, or your whole kingdom is going to be destroyed. Renounce ego and use your great powers for good. Through this message, God is basically granting Ravana a second chance. He's giving Ravana the opportunity to reform, to come back. Right? You have the opportunity to change your wicked ways on your own. I mean, that would be one way of Ram fulfilling his mission without ever having to go there, right? And then Hanuman could simply take Sita back across the ocean and all would be well, if Ravana would change of his own accord. But of course, we know he's not going to do that. He refuses. He says, I'm never going to release her. She is mine. And he wants to kill Hanuman for his words, but Vibhishan is going to intervene. There's a basic rule that runs down through history that you can't kill a messenger. It's sort of like the idea that when a messenger comes up, even in modern battles, they're coming up under a flag of truce. There's a sense in which they should be able to come in, deliver the message, and return safely to bring the return message, right? And so Vibhishan reminds him of this. You can't kill a messenger. It's against Dharma. But Hanuman, Ravana rather, says, well, maybe I can't kill the messenger, but you can still harm the messenger, can't you? You could brand them. You could burn them. You could harm them in some way. You just can't kill them, right? See, Ravana doesn't care about Dharma. It doesn't matter one bit to him because as the king of ego, he's not concerned with duty. He's concerned with glorifying himself. But one of his generals convinces him to spare Hanuman for another reason. The general says if Hanuman is killed, then there's no one that can leap across the ocean. There's no one to tell Rama where Sita is. And without Hanuman doing this, there will not be a war. And Ravana's generals desperately want war. That's what they live for. You know, they see themselves as the glory-seeking type of Kshatriya who wants to build their power, to build their position by doing war. And if we can destroy Ram and his army, it brings revenge against him for those Rakshasas that were killed back earlier in the story, that 14,000 army that was there on Supernaka's behalf. It is going to, demonstrate tremendous power to take down this figure of Rama. So spare Hanuman so he can go back and tell him. But Ravana's rage is still very strong, and he says, all right, I will spare Hanuman's life, but I want to make sure that he's humiliated first. And so Ravana orders that Hanuman's tail be set on fire. The tail is going to be wrapped up in rags and covered in oil. But Hanuman begins to make his tail grow. And his tail just gets bigger and bigger and bigger until all the cloth in Lanka gets used up trying to cover the tail, and it still only covers the tip. Ravana says to set the tail on fire, carry him around for a while, and then let him go. Well, Sita hears what's going on from one of the guards, and she goes to the eternal flame, and she offers up a prayer there. She says, if I've been true to Ram, then let the flame burn cool next to my son Hanuman. And so she's asking for Hanuman not to be injured, not to be hurt by this. The flame agrees, and so Hanuman is uninjured despite having his tail set on fire. Hanuman allows them to carry him around for a little bit, to taunt him for a while, but then he decides it was enough, it was time to go back. So he breaks free of his chains, he grows himself to this tremendous, enormous size, and he begins whipping his tail around this burning tail, which sets the whole city on fire. Everything in that city was destroyed by that fire except for the Ashoka grove that Sita was sitting in and the hut that was occupied by Vibhishan. Those two areas were spared because you had devotees, you had divine beings who were sitting there. But all of the demon stronghold was destroyed by that fire. Hanuman puts out his tail, and he returns to Sita in a very small, very humble form. He seeks Sita's permission to return across the ocean and to tell Ram where she is. She grants it and gives him her head pearl and says, here, take this back to Ram. It'll prove what you say. Hanuman makes his way back across the ocean, and he tells the monkeys and the bears about what happened, and they all take to the sky to fly towards Ram. When Hanuman gets there, he falls down in front of Ram. He falls down at his feet, and he begins to tell his tale. Ram is tearful. He cries. He embraces Hanuman. and grants him immortality in that moment. For as long as the name of God is spoken, Hanuman's name will be spoken right alongside it. Ram, Hanuman, and Sugriv are then going to sit down and they're going to talk this issue over and they're going to try to come up with a plan. Hanuman warns that everything has to be destroyed completely because these Rakshasas, these demons, are never going to change. Ravana can never be transformed into a being of good. Ravana's ego needs to possess everything that he sees. He has no sense of dharma about him. He has no sense of good or will about him. He needs to possess everything that he sees. But that's his downfall. And so the monkey and the bear army are going to travel with Ram to the ocean. And Ram is going to sit there for 3 days in meditation, seeking the blessing of the ocean, asking the ocean to cross it. He wants to restore Dharma upon the earth. He wants to find Sita. He wants to destroy evil. He wants to fulfill his Dharma. And so he's praying and praying to the ocean to allow this massive army to be able to cross. 3 days go by, the ocean still hasn't responded. So Ram strings his bow and he shoots an arrow into the ocean. He says, "Do not mistake meekness for powerlessness." Rama points out that if I wanted to, I could dry this ocean bed and we could simply walk across. I am not a powerless individual. I have the ability to do what must be done. But I'm asking in meekness, I'm asking in humility, because the ocean is you, the ocean is your domain. The ocean, after hearing this, finally replies and says, "Well, I have no fight with you. Why would you ask so aggressively?" And Ram's response is, I ask aggressively for love. I will do anything and everything that I can to reclaim my devotee. I will do everything I can to bring Sita back to me.